Welcome to the Mood Ring Part 2, Coding Your Ring. In this video, we're going to complete Challenge 9 on page 1.17. And in this challenge, you're going to learn about loops, 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 loops. We're going to put our read temperature sensor into a loop and read it 10 times and display the value. Loops are useful ways to do tasks over and over in a calculator or computer program. So take a moment to pause the video, navigate to page 1.17, Challenge 9, and I'll see you there. Challenge 9. In this challenge, we're going to use a loop to read and display 10 temperature measurements, and we're going to use a sleep of 2 seconds between each measurement just to slow it down to make it readable. Now, we've done a lot of this prior to this program. For example, we learned how to construct a temperature object, and we learned how to measure the temperature of that object. We also learned how to display the temperature along with a prompt and the appropriate units. We've even used the sleep command before. Remember that sleep has an argument that is in seconds. So for example, sleep 2 means to pause the program running for 2 seconds. And that just slows the loop down. But what the heck is a loop? Well, a loop is a control statement that repeats a certain block of code until some condition is met. So for example, in a for loop, the condition that is met is the number of times that the loop executes. So for example, a for loop that loops for 10 times, it will loop once and ask the question, have I done this 10 times? And the answer would be no. It would loop again, and now it will have looped twice, and it'll ask the question, have I done this 10 times? And the answer is no. And it'll do that for 3, 4, and 5 until eventually it loops, and it's looped for 10 times, and the loop will ask the question, have I done this 10 times? And the answer will be yes. Yes, in fact, you have done this 10 times. That's a true statement. Well, then the loop says, well, then I'm done. I'm done here. And so it'll exit the loop and then process whatever comes after the loop in the code. So loops are probably one of the most common control structures in programming. Computers and calculators are very good at doing some set of tasks repeatedly and doing them very fast. So for example, reading the temperature, displaying it, and sleeping for 2 seconds is a set of statements in a block of code, and that can be run several times. And the calculator's like, yeah, I can do this as long as you want to, all day long. And so that's what we're going to practice today, is the for loop. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go to the next page, and this time I'm going to do this by using the little blue arrow up here. I'm just going to click on that blue arrow to go to the next page. Remember, you can also use the control touchpad to the right, but I'm just going to use that. Oh, looky there. There's a couple of comments that have been left for us. It says, use a loop with a range of 10. And then here it says, use the sleep method to pause the program. All right, well, let's do that. Let's try to run this program. So to do this, remember, I've got to import the hub. So I'm going to go to Menu, and number 8, TI Hub, and number 1 to import. Good, now I've got that. Now the next thing I need to do is to construct the object. So I'm going to go ahead and do that just like we did before. I'll call it my temp. I'm going to go down, give myself a line there just to kind of separate my import from my main code so that it just is readable. And I'm going to say my temp. And so I'm going to do a construction here. And so to do that construction, I'll go to Menu and number 8, TI Hub, and add input device, because that's what a temperature sensor is, number 4. And the prompt for the variable name is highlighted, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in. I want to call it my_temp. So my. Remember where that underscore is right here. You can look at, see on the keypad to the left there, you can see where it's red. That's the key that gives me all these neat symbols. And I'm going to touchpad click once to the right, twice, 3 times to the right, and then once down to get that underscore. And I'll press enter to paste it into my text. So there's my underscore. Now I'm ready for temp, and that's an abbreviation for temperature. Temperature is kind of a long, hard word to write, don't you think? So just temp. Now I'll tab to the next, and here I have all of my choices. You know, there are actually 3 ports on the hub here, 1, 2, 3. You can see in 1, 2, and 3 right there. And we're in N1, but you could do this in N2 or N3. You could do it in any of those. You could actually have 3 temperature sensors if you wanted. But we're just going to do N1. And now I'll touchpad click once to the right, twice to the right to get out of the parenthesis, and press enter. Now there's the construction right there. Now remember, the next step is to read my temperature.measurement. That's the way that you get the value of the temperature from the digital temperature sensor over here. And that's what I want to do inside my loop. So it's time for my loop now. So I'm going to come down here and go underneath this nice comment right here, and I'm going to say menu. And now this time I'm not going to go to hub, I'm going to go to built-in. That means commands and statements that are built into the Python programming language. And I'm going to choose number 2 for control. And there you'll see that there's a couple of different scenarios for the for command. And I want to do just number 4 for index and range size. So number 4 for index and range size. Now index, this is a variable that's going to hold the count for how many times this loop has run. So remember me in the introduction, I was saying that the control statement will repeat a block of code until some condition is true. And in this case, it's when the index is equal to the size. So it'll say, I'm going to go ahead and make an index, and I'll just call it n. So every time this loop cycles, it will index n. So n will start at 0, then it will go to 1 and 2 and 3, and each time it's going to compare it with the range. And so I'm going to go in here, and this is where I'm going to put in 10. So now it's going to keep asking, have I done this 10 times? And if the answer is no, it's going to execute what's in this block right here. If, however, the answer is yes, I have done it 10 times, then it will exit. So let's go ahead then and read our temperature. So to read our temperature, I'm going to choose the variable that I want to store the temperature in. This is called the return variable. And in my previous program, I said let's make it simple and just call it T for temperature. Now I'm going to press the equals because I'm going to assign the value of T to the return from the myTemperature method called measurement. So that was a mouthful. So let me show you. I'm going to press the var key, and there's my temperature, and I'm going to press enter to return that. Now remember that this is an object, and that objects have built-in methods and properties and all of these things that are bundled into this one object called my temperature, and I can access those by using the dot. When we're talking about numbers, we might call this a decimal. When we're talking about grammar, we might call it a period. And in object-oriented programming, it's often referred to just as a dot. So I'm going to press the dot. And when I press the dot, it copies a dot into the text, but then it also pops up measurement. And so I'm going to hit enter to return that. And so now I have, in the variable name t, I have the value of the temperature sensor. So now I'm going to hit enter to go to the next line. And here's where I'm going to assemble that text string and display it. So I'm going to go to Menu, TI Hub, Commands, and Text at number 2. I'm going to go ahead and put this on, say, row 5. What the heck? And here's where I put in my prompt. So I'm going to do a shift and do temperature for an uppercase. So temperature is equal to, and that's in my quote. Now this gets to be tricky. This is kind of a tough negotiation here. So I'm inside of the quote and I need to get outside, so I'll click on my touchpad once, and that puts me just to the right of the quote, so be careful there. Now remember, the way that we join two strings is with the addition sign, just like in mathematics when we add a and b, or 2 and 3, we use the plus sign. Well, similarly in Python, we can add two strings of characters. Now, I want to add to this temperature prompt the value of the temperature from the temperature sensor. That value is in a format called a floating point type. A floating point type of variable is one that has a decimal in it. And it's a very different kind of a Python variable than a string. But fortunately, Python allows me to convert among all the different variables. But I have to use a command to do that. And we've done this before. So I'm going to go to Menu. Again, this is a built-in command. This is just part of Python. And there, under number 5, you'll see type. And these are all the different types of variables that are found in Python, and you'll learn more about these in the future, but I'm going to choose number 4, string. Now I need to position my cursor between the parentheses and press the enter key. I will put in my T, and now I'm going to go just to the right and use my addition again. I'll put in my quote. Remember, that's the control multiplication, gives me a quote. And here's where I'm going to put in my unit, degrees centigrade. Again, I go down here to this special character key and touchpad click once to the right, twice to the right, 3 times to get that degree symbol. And then I'm going to use centigrade, so I'm going to use a shift of C. It's an uppercase C. And now I'll close my quote, so control multiplication again. Go ahead and use my touchpad, click once to the right, twice to the right, and I'll choose left for my alignment. And again, once to the right, twice to the right, and now I can hit enter. So that's kind of a tough statement to put together. So double check that you've got a quote at the beginning of temperature equals and a quote at the end of temperature equals. Make sure that you have an addition symbol right there. Then you should have the string command, which converts the temperature value, which is a floating point, into a string. That's what this whole thing does, is it converts the temperature into a format that can be displayed. And it joins it with the unit, degrees centigrade, right here. So make sure you have a another addition symbol here, and also the quotes. Make sure it's surrounded in quotes, and then it's going to be positioned to the left. Okay, great. Well, if you got all that in there, pat yourself on the back. That was kind of tough. And I'm going to press enter. Hey, you know, while we're at it, let's take a look here. We didn't really discuss the fact that what these tabs are all about right here. Do you see these two diamonds to my left? In Python, that tab means that you're inside of the block of code that's going to be repeated in the loop. So these tabs are very important. It's what gives the structure to the program that tells Python that I'm inside of my loop. So notice these two statements right here have these two diamonds to the left, which actually these diamonds really don't do anything other than just mark a tab. Maybe you've used a tab key in like a word processing document if you've done that. But they're just tabs. They're really just blank spaces. But what it does is it tells you that since these two lines are tabbed, that it's inside of this for statement. So it's what I have highlighted that's going to be repeated 10 times in my range here. So here's where I'm going to put my sleep. So I'm going to press menu and hub 8 and commands 5 and sleep is number 1, and it tells me that I need to put in a number in seconds. That's 2. Alright, good. Now I'll click once to the right, press enter. Now notice that I'm still tabbed in here. That means I'm still inside this control statement we talked about. Now I don't want to be inside that control statement anymore, so I'm just going to hit backspace once and twice. Okay, so it looks like I have everything finished, so I'm ready to run my program. Double check that you have your temperature sensor plugged in, that you have the Innovator connected to the calculator using your unit-to-unit cable, and that your green light is turned on. Now, oh no, arr! And there it is. And now notice when I pinch this that it's showing the temperature changing. That's because I'm doing this 10 times and you can see it warming up. So now this program's kind of running and I can see it changing as it goes. So that's kind of cool. Well, not quite cool. It's warm, maybe tepid. Give this a try on your own. I'm going to pause the program now and you do the same. When you're all finished writing your code, resume the video. I'll see you here. Welcome back. I hope everything worked out for you and that you got your program to work. Before we go, I want to remind you of a couple of things that we've learned in the past couple lessons. We've tried to compare and contrast inputs and outputs on the calculator. We said that there are inputs in the form of key presses on the keyboard, and now the temperature sensor. And there are also outputs that we've learned about. We've learned about how to output on the Inspire display using TextStat. And we've also learned how to output on the hub's color LED. So we've learned a couple of things about inputs and outputs. We've learned that there are inputs that are on the calculator and inputs that are from the hub. We've also learned that there are outputs that are on the calculator and outputs to the hub. So I hope you've learned a little bit about inputs and outputs, and I hope that you've enjoyed this activity where we've got our digital temperature sensor making multiple measurements. So stay tuned for our next video, Challenge 10.